Phumlani Majosi, the author of Lessons from Power's Heroes. I'm in Accra, in Ghana this week. So I thought since I'm here, I get to speak to a great man who does wonderful work as an economics professor, teacher. He has been on the show before, Professor Jamal Mohammed. He's an associate professor of economics at Koforidua Technical University in Ghana. He is also an executive director at Africa Development and Resources Research Institute. Dr. Mohammed, Professor Mohammed, wonderful to see you, sir.
Oh,
Um,
brother, thank you very much. I think it's
yeah,
been
yeah,
wonderful knowing that you're in Ghana.
yes,
That's so great.
yeah, yeah. I'm in your territory now. In your country. I've been here since last Sunday. Yeah, since last Sunday.
Um, you're welcome. You're welcome.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm
You're
loving the
welcome.
experience. I went to do a bit of shopping at the Accra Mall.
Accra Mall today.
Yesterday. Yeah. So yeah, it was nice
Fine.
there. So yeah, yeah, man. So I want to talk about Ghana. Let's start with Ghana, Professor Mohammed. Where is Ghana right now? You have the president who took power early this year, I believe. And that is John Dramani Mahama, right? He took power early this year. But it's not the first time he's serving as president. Right.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
This is not the first time he came somewhere in 2012.
Yeah.
Then he exited in 2016, and
Mm-hmm.
then went back and then came in 2024, and then he's a bit to reset Ghana. So trajectory, it is not the first time he's been the president. He's been a vice president for some period, an acting president for some period, and then became a president. And then the people of Ghana thought that they didn't want the direction in which Ghana was going, and so he was ousted, or he was made to exit by voting. And then he went back, took his note, looked at the terrain of Ghana and what he thought he had not finished. And so in 2024, the first in the history of the Fourth Republic, I think he obtained an overwhelming endorsement by the Ghanaian populace. And so that's the president you've seen today. And
Mm. Yeah. And how is it doing now? I mean, over the past months he's in. And maybe how was his first term? Let's start there. How was his the first time he served? How was Ghana? Did he govern well? Did he do well on the economy, on governance in general?
yes, so if you look at the wills of people in terms of what they require,
Yeah.
over the period, the voters in Ghana have become very, very more discerning in terms of what they are looking out for and what they wish to see in leaders. And
Yeah.
so if you look at the happenings in 2012 down to 2016, and looking at the happenings today, the differences are just a thin line. If you
Mm.
look at 2012, there was some structural bottlenecks as far as Ghana's economy was concerned. And so we needed to have what we call to engender growth and development in the area of infrastructure and then also the well-being of the people. And so if you look at the thematic areas that he sought to do in 2012, in those days, Ghana requires some level of infrastructure, especially in terms of education, in terms of
Yeah.
health, in terms of road infrastructure. And so, as we, those who are as students of economics, or those of us in the field of economics, we think that those structures are prerequisite for any development to be guaranteed as far as the country is concerned. And so in 2012, 2016, I think his focus was about infrastructure development. And so you could see that much of his energy was channeled in education, where many infrastructure development was provided in those areas, and then that of health. And so you could count major facilities in terms of hospitals, in terms of what we call CHIPS compounds. CHIPS compounds are just a mini health facility where accessibility of health is very difficult for some certain communities. And then those were the areas that he indeed was concentrating. And if you look at macro, micro distinction in terms of voter thinking
Yeah.
and voter behavior, you realize that most of the voters those days were rather thinking about pro-poor poverty initiatives, for
Mhm.
which he was rather at the macro level. And I think that is what cost him the election in 2024, in 2012, in 2016. And so that was actually an issue. Those of us who were into the policy space, we thought that a lot had not gone on in terms of moral suasion, in terms of information communication, that could
Yes.
make voters understand what was being done and what he thought was good for Ghana. And so that was the dynamics, one of the major dynamics. But in terms of infrastructure, he did very well. He had started some infrastructure, and I think much can be added to that. And that lesson he learned from the defeat in terms of the election actually gave him an opportunity to sit back and watch and see how governance could be consolidated and how it could be looked from his perspective. And so going forward, if you look at some of the policies as we may be discussing today,
Yeah.
most of these policies have also intertwined poverty reduction, and they are virtually hinged on what we call poverty reduction initiatives, which I think are one of the major reasons why voters of Emmanuel gave him the mandate.
Yeah. And this year, how is it doing so far this year? He
So
came
yes,
power,
so
and how is it looking like? Is the country
And
stable?
so, and so, if
Yeah.
you look at governance, governance are processes, and I believe that when the wheels of machines of government is going to be consolidated, is going to be expanded, that will lead to development, growth, and development. I think that certain policy frameworks must be put in place, and I think that is what they sought to do, or what they are doing now in terms of policy formulation. And then they also have started implementing some of these policies. Let me give you one of the information. One major issue that one of major issue that confronted the country for which voters overwhelmingly endorsed him was about taxation and the manner in which these taxes were implemented. That was one. Two, had to do with what we call the linking the entire structure of the economy to actually policy and then input and output.
Mm,
So as a big issue that was confronted the economy. The economy needed it's a certain driver that could come in the form of a policy that can also hinge on possibly moving the country towards development. And so one of the major policies they talked about was what we call the 24-hour economy. And
mm.
this 24-hour economy,
24-hour economy.
24-hour economy. In fact, initially, most people didn't have an understanding about how the nature of the 24-hour economy is going to be. But having had the privilege to read the document, you will come to appreciate the fact that things have taken a different turn after the document has been promulgated. Because if you actually read the document gives you the sectoral investment that will go into each of the sectors and what expectation is being required or being sick in terms of this sectoral nature that has been put in the form of a blueprint. And so the 24-hour economy, which I think was a catchy phrase towards the election, initially was not many understood it, many didn't understand it. And now today that policy has been outlawed. And those of us in the economic space, we are actually reviewing each of these and see how that could contribute to the sector of the economy. Let me give you one example. One example of the 24-hour economy here has to do with how irrigation towards the northern and the Volta zone
Yeah.
would be championed and how investment will go into this irrigation. I've always been of the view that for any nation to thrive, you must be doing irrigation 24 hours. You must have irrigation performed on agriculture farms such that the farms will work to the level of output that we are expecting, or it could increase the level of output that we're expecting. And so one bit of the 24-hour economy is how much investment will drive or will be channeled towards this irrigation activity in terms of farming, and then the expected output that way. So this is very important. Another has to do with, as I talked about, taxation. You see, taxation is something that nobody wants to pay tax. And so that is why you see many at times tax avoidance is seen to be one of the behavior of many people. Taxation
Yeah.
is very not much liked by anybody. And
Yeah.
so if a nation is very much taxed, the people become very angry,
Mm,
especially when there is taxation, there is no increase in productivity.
yeah.
And so what he thought to do was realign these taxes that has been, I don't want to use the word befalling Ghana, that has been mandatorily asked people that should pay. And so some of these taxes were realigned, some were removed. And I think that has made the citizenry feel that, look, the gentleman is working for Ghana. And so, for example, there was this taxation on betting. Betting, these young guys have involved themselves in the country here. And when you receive any award from betting, you are taxed. In
Mm,
fact, this angered the youth very much. And so, as part of his campaign, he talked about the fact that he was going to remove this betting tax. And indeed, he has removed that. There were other taxes that he talks about removing. These taxes have also been removed, and then some have been put forward towards next year to be removed. And because of that, there has been a very much clearer picture. Unlike in the case where we used to have a gloomy picture about the economic growth and prospects, there is a much clearer picture as we know where the nation is going and the direction that many people expect the country to go. And because of that, people are now beginning to have that level of trust and will on the governance structure and the governance abilities. And so some of these things were actually what makes people feel okay. And now, in terms of the implementation, one major thing that many have been looking at is how some of these things have been implemented. And across the divide of the ministries in Ghana, steps have been taken, especially in the media budget, how much finance will go into each of these projects that government has actually put forward. And I think that is very important.
And how do you see economic growth this year and beyond in Ghana? Is it going to be something positive, higher than last year? How are your projections looking like? How do you think about the economy this year?
Yeah,
Is it
so if you
to
look
grow
at
faster?
the yeah, so if you look at the variables that we have in terms of our economic growth, that will engender or that will help our GDP.
Mm,
Prospect in our economic growth has been moved somewhere in the region of 3 plus, 3.5, 3.6, 3.7.
yeah,
So the thinking is that we will have a growth which is not oil dependent to about 3.5, 3.6. We're also expecting that if it is going to be oil dependent, we'll have growth somewhere in the region of 3.9, 4.0.
yeah.
And that is a positive scalar in terms of enhancing economic growth and development.
Mm,
And so the growth targets are very good. Even IMF, just some few days ago, IMF has even projected that there is a likelihood of about 0.8 increase in revenue target if government focus on the revenue streams that government has been
yeah.
eyeing in order to increase and mobbing more money for the development. And even external partners, there has been some kind of what we call a good rating for the country because most of the targets that have been earmarked, there seems to be some clear route towards achieving this target. And I think that is very good and a plus for the government. What we have to see is that we want to wish that there shouldn't be any diversional tactics or there should not be some government functional or some government ministries where money should be diverted. And I think the president should be able to do that.
Now let's talk about ECOWAS because Ghana is the member of the ECOWAS, right? This is the
Yeah,
Economic Community of West African States,
yeah.
um, a regional bloc in West Africa. What are your thoughts on ECOWAS? Has it been effective over the past decades since its founding in creating a West Africa that is stable, that prospers, right? That embraces good governance. How has ECOWAS been doing?
So basically, if you look at ECOWAS as a regional bloc,
Yeah.
it has been one of the most, I don't want to use the word sorry state, but I would say that it is one of the blocks that has been ineffective.
Mm,
And aside it's been ineffective, it serves to be so dormant that many member states feel not safe even belonging to ECOWAS, even though that should have been a major block that would open up growth and development and at the same time work towards regional integration as been espoused by many African leaders.
yeah.
The reason why I'm saying this is that most of the legitimacy of these ECOWAS leaders have been questioned by their various countries.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
The
yeah,
legitimacy has been questioned.
yeah,
And because the legitimacy of these African countries who are in the bloc of ECOWAS have been questioned, it serves to dampen the trust and the kind of love that could go with it. And it could have served as a tool of moving or keeping everyone into line and helping the development of African countries. And at the same time, the leaders, some of the leaders we elect, for which they are supposed to be the one to pioneer this ECOWAS agenda, are very slow in reacting. They are very not committed to the cause of ECOWAS. They do something in their own countries which are detrimental to progress and growth. And at the same time, things that they do doesn't even make countries want to align properly. And so ECOWAS as a body has not actually done much to help the cause of African countries. But we would want to see that for that to be done, then African leaders must be legitimately being elected. That is one.
Yeah.
Two, African leaders must be progressive in thinking. Because one of the difficulties we have is that it is not about being a president.
Yeah.
But it is about being a progressive president.
Yeah.
Living beyond reproach.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, most of our leaders do not actually bake themselves towards becoming leaders. And so it becomes even a leadership crisis, even in their own countries.
Yeah.
And so they're sitting on the table of ECOWAS does not actually contribute to what we actually see. And so ECOWAS itself is a major challenge. And you can see what happened when we begin to have, even within the context of ECOWAS, you realize that we used to have what we call WAMU, WAEMU, if you remember, where it is made up of 8 blocks, 8 countries forming the bloc. We can talk about Senegal, we can talk about Niger, we can talk about Burkina Faso, we can talk about Cote d'Ivoire, we can talk about Mali. You get it? And then we can also talk about Niger and then Togo. These countries, even though they were members of ECOWAS, had another bloc that was also serving their interests and serving their masters, France as an example. And so they had some limits and at the same time, some allegiance to ECOWAS. And this served to have been one way that was breaking the front of ECOWAS. And so there's a trouble.
Yeah, that's not good. But what can the civil society, what can ordinary people aligned with the non-political parties, whether it's in unions, it's in civil movements, what can they do to change how leaders behave in the ECOWAS region and maybe in Africa in general? Because I feel like these politicians you speak of, these leaders who you argue that they are not they are not legitimate, right? That's what you are saying. Many of them. But what can civil society do? What can ordinary people do to counter these people? Do they go out in large numbers and protest and mobilize and start movements? But will that not put them in danger as these leaders could respond in a brutal way? What could the civil society or ordinary people do about this?
The basic thing that I will request is that civil society should begin talking.
Should start talking.
They should start talking.
Yeah.
When I say they should start talking, this talking should be in the form of networks where civil societies in Africa have a common network where they begin to see how ideas could be shared and push forward legitimate means to get these governments to work. And so let me give an example. One of the civil societies, one of our colleague civil societies in Africa, in Ghana here, that has actually done that, has to do with Imani Africa. They started as Imani Ghana and then became Imani Africa, where they have what we call other relationship with other African civil society organizations.
Yeah.
Right? So they must begin to talk.
Yes.
Now, even with Imani in Francophone, they have Imani Francophone.
Yeah.
There should have been a basis where all of us in the civil society space should begin to have one common platform to talk. But let me tell you something. Some of these civil societies are political in nature. They serve their paymasters. And
Yes, I
so
see. Yeah,
that is
yeah,
one of the major weaknesses that you can find as far as the performance of civil societies in holding governance accountable.
yeah,
And so within the domicile countries for which these civil societies live, there is even a challenge of trust, of independency, and legitimacy as far as the people are concerned. And sometimes you may even see a civil society that is very critical in terms of moving towards development. But these governments will enlist their enemies, their cronies on you, and you become the bad nut within the country. And you find a way to make it. But one good thing is that civil society should begin to talk positively. And once civil society begin to talk positively, there should be some thematic areas for development for Africa.
yeah,
My brother, how do you feel? You wake up in the morning, you live in South Africa.
yeah.
And I think in terms of infrastructure development in Africa, South Africa stands tall.
Mm,
And so you might not see it very well. And when you come as you are living in Accra, you haven't gone to some part of
mm,
some other countries.
yeah,
There are certain countries sometimes I travel to, and you will bow your head down in shame. The question is, are these leaders in existence? But we have civil society in these countries who cannot talk. Some of them, even when you talk and your voice is very loud, the state machinery will make sure they get you out.
yeah,
But one good positive way is that when civil society begin to talk positively and they have these thematic areas that they want to see an ideal Africa, then it will provide an initial platform for them to know how this information can be communicated. For example, I am a leader of a civil society. My ultimate goal and the modus operandus that I use is I do research, then sync that with public perception and communicate in the form of policy advocacy.
yes.
And so internally, I use data and science to make decisions.
Mm,
We have other civil societies who are there, and their ultimate goal is at the high level of this in terms of macroeconomic thinking. They may not be doing research, but they may be talking. And then the rules of government may align to rules of government. At the end of the day, whatever that you want to do, you may not say. So if they begin to talk positively and they all come to the drawing board to talk about an ideal Africa, ideal ECOAS, ideal countries that human beings must live in,
mm,
then we'll make some positive strides. And so, for example, there are some basic tenets that we need in any country. Roads is a right, it's not a privilege.
yeah,
Water is a right, it's not a privilege. The basic survival in terms of food is supposed to be a right. And so, even in Ghana's constitution, it is part of our fundamental rights that people could demand, even though the constitution provides that government could provide them based on the conditions that we have. But I am happy that that was even enshrined in constitutional wise, legal frameworks have talked about it. And so leaders in these countries must begin to think that these are fundamental human rights, social amenities. And so civil society must begin to look at these lens. Then we begin to have thematic areas how this could be achieved and how that could be drummed home into the minds of leaders of these African countries for us to get whatever we want to get. And that is very important. And so civil society must also know what they want,
yeah,
not in terms of aligning themselves to government. Even if the government is doing right, it is good to pat the government at the back. That look, that's okay, that's fine. What you are doing is okay, and we think that it is good for our survival and our growth and forward march.
yeah,
But when you are not doing well, we should be quick to say that what we have not been doing is that you are doing certain things we think that are not good. And I think that you must go towards this direction. You cannot force it onto the truth of them, but you must also learn to do positive lobbying. For example, you must lobby their parliament where we think most of these laws are passed into, most of these documents are passed into laws.
yes,
Most
yeah,
of
that's true.
policies are being looked at so that these things could be done. But it is a holistic approach, and I think civil society has a role to play.
Now, let me ask you about because I was at a conference. Uh, I'm here in Accra. I came through for a conference, and one of the comments that came up, I've heard this comment before many times. The people who argue that well, Africa is not poor. It's rich in natural resources. It's just that well, it just needs to ensure that it's got good governance but it's a rich continent with natural resources. Um, how do you see Africa's poverty, right? And is it something, how do we address it, Africa's poverty, in your view?
Yeah, so if you read poverty write-ups, you will come to appreciate that one of the major poverties is man-made.
Mm,
One of the major poverty is man-made. Okay. Uh, when we have poverty, that we call it man-made. If you want to get away with poverty that is man-made, then we need good leaders.
yeah,
A leader who has that empathy of people that is moved towards development.
yeah,
So let's just look at even the biblical version that the normal talker do unto others as you want to be done to.
yeah,
And so if you live in your house and you have good television, you have refrigerator, you have all the good things, air conditioning, you have all the good things in your home, don't you think it is good that your neighbor has some?
yes,
Provided that the economic dynamics are right for your neighbor to have some job to do. And
mm,
so that should be what should be in the minds of most African leaders, that I will want to come out, and I've always told people that I would want to leave my house, see very good road. I want to get very good transportation system. I want to get a very good rail system, good hospitals, good inventions. And so African leaders, one of the basic way we can do is to look at people as investment. That
mm,
is one assurance we can cure poverty.
yeah,
There is a quote I always love, which Adam Smith once said. It says, education is an investment good to the individual, and it is an investment good to the nation. And
yeah,
so, which tells you that we are property. That is why they call us citizens of countries.
yeah,
At a point in time, you are a property of the state. The
mm,
question I ask is that, is the state happy to see its property looking at this way, inflicted with poverty? And so, one way is that the state must take active control, active role in ensuring that one, we are free of education poverty. Once somebody is given an investment good in terms of education, then two, the state must make sure that the enabling environment is there to reduce unemployment in the economy. Because it's not everybody that the state can provide jobs to.
yeah,
Then three, the state must engender and forcefully ensure that private sectors play the game, not a chess.
yeah,
They play the game rightly. So private sector, once you find yourself in the domicile or in the normal resident of any country, you must play the game fairly.
yeah,
And then the government must also ensure that government purchases, government actions, government decisions, government policies are pro poverty reduction.
mm,
And so it's a multifaceted approach. And the
yeah,
third is cultural dynamics, which governments must take a very serious look at.
mm,
Some cultures continue to exacerbate poverty,
mm.
for
Yeah,
which,
that's a very interesting point. That some people may find
yes,
it
culture,
controversial. And
culture,
I heard that Professor
culture,
Mohammed said this.
culture
Yeah, yeah,
is one of the, some cultures are one of the pinnacles of continuously increasing poverty among its populace.
it's quite unfortunate. Yeah,
Can you imagine a culture dynamics thinking where they tell you that education is bad? Can you imagine such cultures? Can you imagine a culture that tells you that schooling is bad? A
mm.
culture that tells you
Just
that,
before you proceed, Professor Mohammed, back where I come from, in rural KwaZulu-Natal, in South Africa, in the older days, and when I say in the older days, I'm talking about 70s, before 70s, before 80s, you know.
yeah,
Um, there was a belief that if you send a woman to school, what's the point? You know, if you send a woman, a girl to school, she will go there and for what? Because what they are here for is to get married and have kids. That's what was happening. Culture issue, man.
So,
These are black people who are setting themselves, back.
so what you are saying is not only peculiar in KwaZulu-Natal. I've been privileged to be there before.
Mm.
It's not only in
Yeah,
South
it happened
Africa.
in many
I am telling you that we all
places
grew
around the
up
world.
to
Yeah.
know that to understand that women place was in the kitchen,
Yeah.
and
Mm.
that was absurdity. Today we have the women doing fantastic,
Mm.
very well, and I'm so happy that most developmental models we keep to talk about gender inclusiveness, gender parity, and all of these. And
Yeah.
so even male, okay, even males in some cultures in Africa, it was that a child was a resource for the parent, and
Mm.
that they were using this child to be able to go to farm and increase their lot in the farms. It took active campaigns for people to understand that education is not for the West alone. Education is for all of us. And so some of these cultures have to be looked at. Recently, I was watching a video on TikTok, and a group of young people being told by a pastor to live a certain lifestyle. Can you imagine in the 21st century?
Mm.
And so culture could be expanded even to include religion,
Mm.
where these religious beliefs could further exacerbate poverty. And so as a nation, we will need to think about if we want to actually deal with poverty, it should be multifaceted. Aside the role of government, communities must be given moral suasion. There should be continuous education on community leaders. There should be force to some extent on cultures to do away with that part of culture that is inimical to the growth and progress of society.
Mm.
And so if government looks at it from that point of view, government will be aligning culture to reducing poverty. Government will be using government rule as a mundane in terms of poverty alleviation and then economic growth and development. Civil society organizations will come with their viewpoint in terms of new models of growth and development, where they will assist government and push government to do the right thing. We can talk about the academia, which is very, very, very important. Government should link up with academia, or academic policies and output of the academics should be linked up to governance in terms of growth and implementation of policies. Because if you look at most developed countries, most of the models that they have used that have enhanced their development and growth are basically what emanated from academics, where we
Yeah.
can talk about from Einstein, we can talk about all those gurus we can talk about in terms of academics. So most of the science you can see, data, ICT, are all emanated from from academics. And so for African countries to grow, we should begin to take academics very serious. And that's when we have issues about, or we have gone to hit the block in terms of a policy implementation, let's bring everybody together, including lay people, to think through how we can solve these issues.
These issues. Professor Mohammed, wonderful to talk to you, sir. Thanks for a very enlightening conversation. I appreciate your time. You are a very busy man, so I'm glad that you've taken time to talk to me on this show. Professor Mohammed is an associate professor of economics at Koforidua Technical University. He's an executive director as well at Africa Development and Resources Research Institute. I really love his comments. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, sir. Wonderful to talk.
Thank you very much, my brother. I'm so grateful for the interview. I'm grateful. Maybe we'll catch up another time when there are issues that we have to discuss.
And
God
when you
bless you.
come, yeah, when you come down to Johannesburg, let us know.
Definitely, I will. I'll give you a call before I come.
When you
Thank you
come
very
to South
much. I'm
Africa.
grateful. And thank you for the time.
Thank you. It's Phumlani
Bye.
Majosi. We'll chat soon. You enjoyed this conversation? Well, if you did, do subscribe to this YouTube show, the Phumlani Majosi Show, on public policy. Remember to follow me on X as Phumlani Majosi. I'm also on Facebook, Phumlani Majosi. That's my Facebook page. I'm also on LinkedIn, Phumlani Majosi. I'm also on Instagram at Phumlani Majosi. I'm also on TikTok at Phumlani Majosi. We are pushing the conversation, the discourse. If you have any recommendations or thoughts about this show, do email me, majosimedia@gmail.com. Majosimedia@gmail.com.